Rise in anti-Asian and racist attacks we've seen in Vancouver, Richmond, and elsewhere on the Lower Mainland. In fact, the force says Burnaby Mounties have been called to several incidents where victims have been taunted with racist slurs, and in fact, one business here in Burnaby was targeted with racist graffiti. Now, police have stepped up patrols on foot and on bike in what they call crime hotspots. Mike, Anita?
All right, Dan, thanks very much. Dan Burrett live at Metro Town tonight. All right, let's get to the latest COVID-19 numbers in BC. And while there were new deaths to announce today, following a day when no one died of COVID-19 across the province. So here are the numbers. Dr. Bonnie Henry says 9 new cases have been confirmed since yesterday, bringing our total to 2,558. 33 people are in hospital with COVID-19, including 6 in ICU. Dr. Henry announced 2 new deaths today, our total now at 164. There have been 2,153 recoveries. That's 84% of the total caseload. She also reminded British Columbians the overdose crisis is still an emergency situation. 117 people died last month alone.
We also are mindful of this other public health crisis that continues unabated in our province. And we are working hard to ensure that we continue to address that emergency as well.
Dr. Henry also declared the outbreak at Mission Institution over. It was at one point the largest prison outbreak in the country.
Well, perhaps some good news for parents. Playgrounds across the Lower Mainland will start to reopen tomorrow. All 166 playgrounds will soon ring with the sound of children playing. The Vancouver Park Board will also open the gates to more than 320 outdoor recreation amenities like skate parks, basketball and volleyball courts. The board says all parks will be open by June 1st to line up with the reopening of schools. But the cities are reminding people using the facilities to maintain physical distancing, to wash and sanitize hands before and during play, and to stay home if sick.
And stay with us later in this newscast. We're going to have the superintendent of Surrey School District on the show ahead of some students' part-time return to on-site classes next week. Jordan Tinney will be answering your questions on what school could look like in the new normal and how his district is working to reduce infection risks. Health officials are grappling with an ongoing COVID-19 outbreak at the Langley Lodge care home facility. 2 more people have died.
As John Hernandez reports, family members are losing confidence the health authority can keep the virus under control.
I would like to see this eradicated. This is enough. We don't want to be this kind of a winner.
For 2 months, Serena Gregg has tried to be patient. Her husband, John, is confined to this long-term care home in Langley, where staff are battling one of the worst COVID-19 outbreaks in the province.
At this point, I can't visit. My husband does have a terminal disease. I may not be able to see him before he dies.
The virus has killed 22 people here. That's the highest death toll of any long-term care home in BC.
When this virus gets into long-term care, residents can get sick very, very quickly, and they may have very few symptoms, and so it's very challenging to control it.
Health officials say the large number of dementia cases here has made controlling the virus a challenge. John Gregg lives in that ward. He was diagnosed with COVID-19 2 weeks ago, but seems to be on the mend. This photo taken this morning. Still concerns from family over just how long this outbreak could last.
This is a really sneaky disease. There's so much that's unknown. And even though we're being given new freedoms, don't be careless and don't drop your guard.
The Fraser Health Authority is now ramping up cleaning staff, dispatching a virus SWAT team, and appointing a new pandemic response director.
This extra support will help make sure that we can maintain all the measures in place, and so that we can actually completely stop the spread of this virus in this facility.
Today, BC's health minister assured family that staff are doing their best.
The people there are working hard. They're fundamentally committed to the people that they serve.
A group effort that hasn't been lost on loved ones who have the most to lose.
I just really want to encourage the staff here. I love the staff. They're like my family. We've spent 4 years together, and I have great concerns for them, as well as my husband being reinfected and not being reunited with him.
John Hernandez, CBC News, Langley.
Well, if you're looking to get a driver's license, it is still a waiting game. While knowledge tests have resumed, in-vehicle exams are still suspended.
And as Belle Puri of the CBC's Impact Team reports, despite what's happening in other provinces, BC isn't yet ready to open the door.
And that's how much gas it has.
There's lots of time for motorcycle talk with his nephew as Rob Everest waits for his trucking career to get back on track.
My life's in limbo right now. My financial position is hurting because I invested quite a bit of money in these lessons.
After $5,000 worth of training, he's ready for a road test. But ICBC stopped doing them over 2 months ago as a COVID-19 precaution. Everest isn't the only one waiting. Ernesto Lopez was left stranded in the middle of switching his Venezuelan license to a BC license. He doesn't understand why ICBC would continue to offer knowledge tests when no one can get a road test.
So it's kind of like a little funnel where you have a pool of candidates, but no one's going through, right? Then how long would I have to wait before I can book another road test, right?
Before COVID, the wait for a road test was easily 3 months. Since mid-March, that backlog has grown by approximately 75,000 British Columbians.
This is about people's livelihoods, because without that road testing, they can't find work. If other businesses can open up with safety protocols in place, why can't ICBC?
The provincial government says it's looking for a safe way to resume road tests that will protect examiners from potential exposure to the virus. Other provinces have been offering limited road tests for over a month now. Alberta, Manitoba. And if you go for a test in Saskatchewan, a dash cam will monitor your activities, and the instructor is in another vehicle, following behind and giving instructions on a cell phone. David Eby has a problem with that.
It's quite frequent that the driver examiner has to reach over and take control of the vehicle during the exam because the person who's being examined is about to do something that is very unsafe with the vehicle. And you can't do that when you're following behind in a vehicle.
Rob Everest says he may not be able to wait for road tests to resume. He can't stay unemployed for much longer.
I just find it very difficult that this morning I can go out and get a haircut, I can walk around the mall, but I can't go do a road test.
Plans to start driving, eventually buy a truck and start his own business may be nothing more than a dream. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, TransLink is slowly returning back to normal business. Fare collection on buses resumes next week, and the number of available seats also increasing. But there are still some big questions around long-term ridership and the timeline for major projects. TransLink CEO Kevin Desmond told the TransLink Mayor's Council this morning they can't move on to the next stage of the SkyTrain extension to Surrey's Fleetwood neighborhood until the long-term stimulus plans from higher levels of government are figured out.
The region, the COVID crisis is absolutely going to influence how we're thinking about the next 30 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years for that matter.
TransLink saying don't know when or if ridership will return to the record high levels seen before COVID. Staffing and fare levels are returning to normal next week. TransLink is working through different scenarios on ridership and what it means for the long-term budget.
Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart says third-party food delivery companies are charging too much for their services, hurting the already struggling restaurant industry and customers. They charge restaurants about 30%, and customers pay a delivery fee. Stewart wants that to change.
I'm asking delivery app corporations to do their part to help restaurants and cafes stay afloat through these unprecedented times. And I'm supporting the BC Restaurant Association's call to temporarily cap third-party delivery platform commissions at no more than 15%.
The mayor says if the companies don't make changes, he will work with other levels of government to regulate them and make fees fairer. There was also a warning from Vancouver Coastal Health.
We are at the lowest levels we are likely to see for COVID-19. The risk in the community that you'll be exposed to it is very low, but the virus is not going to disappear. So that's important because we still need to follow the guidance of public health officials as we begin to reopen society.
Dr. Daly thanks citizens for flattening the curve by being careful to physically distance and wash their hands, adding this was one of the most successful regions anywhere.
As businesses start to reopen, one of the most vivid reminders of the shutdown starting to come down.
As Deborah Goebel reports tonight, the plywood intended to protect businesses became a public place to express thanks and admiration.
Ready?
For 2 months, these boards secured Kim Barstow's print shop, the plywood covering the windows, keeping her store safe from harm when COVID-19 turned Gastown into a ghost town.
Probably the day I saw this store boarded, and how I think that's when it really hit me.
But what made it even worse was how ugly her boarded up store looked.
When I went, that's got to change. That's not looking good.
Hers was the very first in Vancouver where artists were asked to come and paint the boards.
It just came to me that I thought, well, paint what's in the news.
The first two were portraits of Dr. Bonnie Henry and Dr. Teresa Tam. Within a week, all over Metro Vancouver, neighborhoods were following suit with their own artwork.
Obviously, there's always one trendsetter and everybody else follows, so you definitely got to pay respect where it's due.
But we're in phase 2 now. Stores are reopening and the protective plywood with its comforting artwork is no longer needed.
Today we're just taking down all of these pieces of artwork, and then we're going to package it up and save them, because apparently we're going to do a museum.
It shows we're moving on, we're feeling more positive.
Definitely the boards coming down were symbolic of a second phase.
The security of boarded up stores is part of phase 1. But we still need the gentle image of Bonnie Henry assuring us that we too are safe now that our defenses have been lowered just that little bit more. So the plywood portraits from Barstow's store, along with many others from around Vancouver, are being preserved. As they come down, they'll be placed on the chain link fence behind Gastown for all to see.
A new beginning to our world and how we're going to handle maybe the next wave. That's it.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province is flagging a labor shortage this year of thousands of seasonal workers. The deficit is affecting sectors like farming, seafood, food processing, and more. The BC Agricultural Council says the effects aren't widespread just yet. It is monitoring the effects on a key harvesting window in just a few weeks, though some farms say they're already short of workers.
The City of Vancouver is installing new, safer washroom facilities on the downtown east side in response to the ongoing pandemic and the recent tragedies in porta potties. Access to amenities like washrooms is a challenge for many people in marginalized populations during the best of times. Now the existing porta potties are being replaced with monitored washroom trailers to create safer options in priority areas. They're currently being installed at the Kingsway Church of the Nazarene, the Wish drop-in location on Alexander Street, and at 62 East Hastings Street. Meteorologist Brett Soderholm joins us now on what is a beautiful evening after a gorgeous day.
I know. Yesterday at this time I was preparing myself and many people for a lot of cloudy skies today, and today I am very happy to be wrong. The sun came out and boy did those temperatures start rising quickly. I want to show you where we're at right now across the Lower Mainland, because these are some of the warmest temperatures we've seen in quite some time. Notice that at Vancouver Airport about 22 degrees, but going just even a little bit inland and places say even like Coquitlam and Pitt Meadows and over to Abbotsford, these are all going to be in the mid to upper 20s, and coincidentally these are our high temperatures that we got to today. So Squamish, for example, another place worth mentioning, around 26 degrees, and this heat made its way over to Vancouver Island as well. Port Alberni reaching 28, Campbell River not too far behind. And what's interesting to note is that some of the warmest weather in the province at least was in the south coast, whereas into the interior, Kelowna and Kamloops into the low 20s. Now as we go ahead for the remainder of this evening and getting into the overnight period, we're not looking at any rain and really not a lot of building cloud cover either. Low temperatures tonight really quite mild, only going down to about 13 degrees, and by tomorrow afternoon it is going to be another rather warm day. We're looking at highs again, 23 degrees, closer to the water, and that could be even into the upper 20s by the time that we get into places like the Fraser Valley. I do want to take this time though to stress how the UV index is going to be very high tomorrow, so if you are going to be outside for any length of time, please wear some sunscreen and for sure take your sunglasses with you as well.
Good advice. Thanks, Brett. Talk to you in a bit. And a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And the two of us are on Instagram and Twitter as well. Give us a follow.
Well, just days after many restrictions were lifted in New Brunswick, there has been a COVID-19 outbreak. Coming up, new cases are being linked to just one person, and people are furious about who he is.
Thank you, as always, for watching our live stream where we are ad-free during the television commercial break. Provincial and federal politicians say they are trying to fix the problems in long-term care facilities in Ontario and Quebec.
It's in response, of course, to a pair of reports by the military claiming seniors are living in horrific conditions during the pandemic. Julie Van Dusen now on some possible solutions.
Ministre du Québec, M. François Legault.
Quebec Premier François Legault says he is short of staff in long-term care homes. 10,000 are needed. He's asked the military to continue to help until mid-September and has launched a campaign to recruit thousands of orderlies who will make $49,000 a year.
We're talking, and that's important, about a rewarding job that makes a real difference in people's life.
Today, Doug Ford announced an independent inquiry into the problems exposed by the military in his long-term care facilities.
They will call witnesses. The reports will be made public, and we'll get answers.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde.
Justin Trudeau says soldiers are doing a great job, but a lasting solution is needed.
We've offered to help with the provinces. We will, of course, always respect provincial jurisdictions.
The NDP says Canadians have seen enough and heard enough. It's time to put long-term care under the Canada Health Act.
So we are going to push the government for real action in solving this problem, showing leadership in removing profit from the long-term care system.
The Bloc Québécois says Ottawa should just increase the money for health and not meddle in seniors' care.
If you want to be sure that Canada really takes good care of its people, you should ask the First Nations.
Trudeau says he is open to discussions and everything is on the table.
And I'm not going to, short-circuit that conversation by putting forward aggressive proposals right now.
The Treasury Board minister says the provinces might see it as aggressive if Ottawa started dictating national standards.
Otherwise, we would engage into jurisdictional fights, and that would be completely counterproductive.
Justin Trudeau will be speaking to the premiers tomorrow night about the crisis in long-term care. Revealing few details, he says he will continue to offer his help while respecting provincial jurisdiction. Julie Van Dusen, CBC News, Ottawa.
And a Toronto park made national headlines when it was packed by thousands of people violating physical distancing rules over the weekend. Now officials think they've found a way to make sure that doesn't happen again. City staff have painted hundreds of white circles on the grass in Trinity Bellwoods Park. It's a visual reminder for parkgoers to keep their distance. Circles are big enough for 2 people to lie down on blankets or for 3 to sit cross-legged. Failure to keep your distance could result in a ticket.
Interesting idea.
Well, we've seen that a lot actually in the States as well at a lot of those parks. So.
Yeah, and of course, the Premier was telling people that were there last weekend to go get tested. It'll be interesting to see how many did.
Stick with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford is promising action after a scathing report revealed horrific conditions at 5 long-term care homes, from cockroach infestations to residents left in soiled diapers. David Common looks at the monumental task of fixing a system broken long before COVID-19.
Listen carefully. A care home resident is dying. Her breathing tube may be clogged. Often overwhelmed staff not around.
She died alone, struggling.
Marie Harris was her daughter, and a year ago told CBC Marketplace about the many deficiencies.
There should be legislation that has to have more people to take care of our loved ones. More nursing staff, more PSWs on the floor.
The current government has an enormous task.
But the tasks are clear for Alex Van Kralligen, who served as a lawyer on a recent public inquiry examining long-term care. It, along with workers, academics, and families, point to a need for minimum staffing ratios in nursing homes. That would mean more staff and likely higher pay to attract, retain, and offer better training to people in an industry facing a years-long staffing crisis.
It's made me very sad that we've had to come to this awful moment to make these sorts of changes when people were ringing the bell for so long about the problems in the system.
Then there are the hundreds of older buildings. Many of the beds inside only meet the standards from nearly 50 years ago. It often means multiple residents are crammed into one room, a nightmare for infection control.
We need their support if we want to change the system, a broken system.
Doug Ford came to power on a promise to cut spending. He's now asking Ottawa to foot the enormous repair bill. Long-term care was in crisis long before COVID. The question is what governments and taxpayers will do now to fix it. David Coleman, CBC News, Toronto.
In New Brunswick, there is bitter frustration over an outbreak of COVID-19 linked to just one man, a doctor. The province had no deaths and most cases resolved, but now, as Harry Forstall reports, only days after rules were lifted, thousands have lost their new freedoms.
Water bombers near the city of Campbellton load up to fight a nearby fire, but residents here already feel burned. Virtually COVID-free for weeks, New Brunswick faces a new outbreak centered right here.
There are 3 new confirmed cases of COVID-19.
Health officials had warned COVID-19 would return. What's shocking is that a doctor caused this outbreak, someone who should have known better.
The circumstances of this outbreak were completely preventable and happened in spite of all of our efforts to keep the virus at bay.
The doctor from the local hospital crossed into neighboring Quebec on personal business. He returned with COVID-19, didn't self-isolate for the required 2 weeks, and instead went straight back to treating patients. At least 150 people may have been exposed.
You know, put away for a while, because that's not right what he did there. Because half of the city is going to be infected with that there.
New Brunswickers have been reveling in their status as a province that beat COVID-19. No contagion haunting nursing home corridors, no deaths. A hard-won victory now put at risk.
Any healthcare professional that, traveled outside the province and if that is the case and did not come back and self-isolated, obviously, it is of great concern and disappointment.
CBC isn't identifying the doctor out of concern for his safety. But Premier Blaine Higgs made clear today there will be consequences.
Information has been passed along to the RCMP to determine exactly what took place and whether charges are warranted.
People here were just beginning to enjoy the lifting of COVID restrictions. Now it's back to family bubbling and closing businesses that had only just reopened. Harry Forstall, CBC News, Fredericton.
All around the world, the pandemic has changed the way individuals, businesses, and nations get and spend money. And according to a former Bank of Canada governor, global economies should consider rethinking plans for recovery from the damage done too.
I would caution that, at least as we're coming out of this crisis, some of traditional stimulus measures will be less effective than usual. Think of income transfers or temporary tax cuts. There will be less consumption, more caution, more savings in response to some of these traditional stimulus measures.
Carney spoke via video conference at today's UN Pandemic Recovery Summit, suggesting the switch to e-meetings and e-commerce has already changed the world. He noted global supply chains are already transitioning to more local production, and he sees the restructuring of heavy emitter industries, including airlines and oil and gas companies, ahead. Carney says just as with climate change, it is cheaper for nations to spend up front to address what's coming, rather than deal with the costs of the after effect.
On the heels of fresh criticism from the Chinese government, Justin Trudeau has commented on yesterday's court ruling against Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou.
We have an independent judicial system that has rendered a judgment without any political interference. There are a number of further legal steps available to Ms. Meng that she will undoubtedly avail herself of.
After the ruling against the Huawei CFO, China's foreign ministry warned its relationship with Ottawa could face what it calls continuous harm.
An appliance fire has left an Ontario senior feeling burned. She believes she was buying from a quality, big-name brand that would stand behind its product. But when things went wrong, she ended up in a David and Goliath battle for compensation. Go Public's Rosa Marcatelli has the story.
Valerie Hammond's using her microwave a lot these days, as her new countertop oven sits unused in the corner of her kitchen. She doesn't trust it, she says, after her old one went up in flames.
The kitchen was full of thick, dense smoke, and there were flames shooting out of the control panel.
That fire caused hundreds of dollars in damage. She figured it would be covered since she was dealing with a brand name she trusted. She was wrong. Whirlpool with Jones KitchenAid and other big brands replaced the appliance, which it's required to do under warranty. But a customer service rep told Hammond if she wanted compensation for the damage, she'd have to try and get it from a third-party company she'd never heard of that made the oven in China.
You're telling me you can wash your hands of it because you didn't make it? It doesn't say Electech on it. It says KitchenAid.
She also couldn't get answers to what caused the fire.
How is it confidential when it went up in flames in my kitchen and I'm not entitled to know why it burned?
No,
or
ma'am.
how it burned?
No, ma'am, we replaced it for you.
That's not the issue. The issue is we had a lot of smoke damage in this house. We or two seniors could have died in a fire because your control panel.
There are laws to protect consumers, but many consumer organizations won't get involved in cases where appliances cause damage. That leaves consumers to take on companies on their own in court for compensation. A recent study found 68% of people surveyed said it was difficult to find the appropriate agency to file complaints. The study also found most consumers see government complaint handlers as only marginally effective.
Clearly, there are some retailers and some manufacturers who are prepared to play a game.
After hearing from Go Public, Whirlpool negotiated with Hammond, paying her $5,000 for the damages, far more than the $600 she originally asked for. Whirlpool says Hammond's customer service experience is unacceptable and would be addressed, and that customer safety is a top priority. It didn't say what caused the fire, only that it was an isolated incident that's been reported to Health Canada. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
Coming up after the break, are you concerned about sending your kids back to school? Well, the superintendent of the Surrey School District, that's BC's largest school district, is here to take your questions. Call us at 604-662-6801. Send us an email or write your question in our live chat on Facebook and YouTube.
It was another rough night in East Vancouver. Here, an ambulance crew tried to revive a man. They'd been told he'd taken an overdose of heroin. There were 20 overdose calls in all last night, one death.
We're doing everything we can. I don't know what else we can do.
Police say heroin has never been more popular in Vancouver. Prices are low, they say, and there is an increasing number of dealers in the city with a pipeline straight to the source in Asia. Some of that heroin is hitting the streets so pure, so strong, it kills. It's a message which is slowly getting out to the street. This woman, who wouldn't give her name, says she used to do heroin. She's too scared to touch it now.
No, there's messages all over in the bars and everything not to touch it.
Workers for Vancouver's Needle Exchange program have been posting warnings throughout the downtown east side. But some people just don't care. This woman says she's an addict who would rather risk the threat of death by overdose than face the pain of withdrawal.
What happens if you don't have it?
I get sick, I start puking, hardcore sweats, convulsions.
She is not alone. About half of Canada's heroin addicts live in this city. Police say with so many dealers and so many sources of the drug, this is one battle they're not even close to winning. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
There are some workers in this country who make $1.50 an hour. They don't have a pension, and they're not eligible for workers' compensation. They're farm workers in British Columbia's fertile Fraser Valley. And as Jerry Thompson reports, the beginning of summer means another attempt at union organizing.
Until last night, union organizers had been kept off farm property with verbal abuse and no trespassing signs. Now they have the clout of a Labor Relations Board ruling that says employees who live in cabins on the farm have the right to talk union if they want to, and the farm owners cannot interfere. This organization campaign is complicated by the fact that the union leaders, many of the farmers, and virtually all of the farm workers are East Indian. That means it's an internal political struggle within the East Indian community as well. Farm workers here are not covered by minimum wage laws. Stoop labor from sunrise to sunset pays roughly $16 a day, or $1.50 an hour. They pay rent to live in squalid little cabins with a hot plate for a kitchen and a small sink for sanitation. The union would like to change all of this and boost workers' wages to at least $6 an hour. The farm owner was not home last night, but his son told us they just could not afford to pay those higher wages.
The interest rates are so high, the farmer really can't really pay much more.
He says the farmers who do survive will turn more and more to machine harvesting.
There's a sprout machine now that can do almost everything, hey, but not cut off the sprouts yet, but we're working on that too.
The union has been organizing farm workers for 2 years now. So far, they have 6 certifications, 3 signed contracts, and about 1,200 members. But there are 14,000 farm workers in BC, and the union has a long way to go.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Do you know this woman? Burnaby RCMP are searching for her tonight after an 84-year-old Asian woman was deliberately tripped at Metrotown last month. It happened on Central Boulevard outside the Metrotown SkyTrain station. Contact caused the senior, as you saw there, to fall. Police say she was shaken but not badly hurt.
I have great concerns for them, as well as my husband being reinfected.
Family members say they're losing confidence Fraser Health will be able to keep COVID-19 under control at the Langley Lodge care home facility. 2 more people have died, bringing the total there to 22. The health authority says many patients at the home have behavioral conditions, which make it a challenge to slow the outbreak.
This morning I can go out and get a haircut, I can walk around the mall, you know, my sister can go get a manicure, but I can't go do a road test.
Frustration over ICBC suspending road tests. Rob Everest is trained to be a truck driver but can't take his final road test, leaving his life in limbo and his financial position hurting. Normally, ICBC conducts more than 7,000 road tests a week, and the government expects a major backlog when things are back up and running.
Well, next week is a big one for BC schools, with some kids returning to the classroom part-time. Now, it is voluntary, and some parents are opting to have their kids stay home and learn remotely, as they have been since March. Joining me now is the head of BC's largest school district, Surrey Superintendent Jordan Tinney. He's taking your questions tonight, and while he can't speak to all school districts in the province, he can speak generally and to what his district is doing. Thanks for being on the show tonight, Mr. Tinney.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Now, Surrey has been praised as a district leading the way when it comes to communication and the return to school. But what do you see as some challenges that are likely to pop up next week? Because things probably aren't going to go perfectly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, things aren't going to go perfectly. And, you know, BC is a very diverse province. So what would work in Surrey won't necessarily work in the north or the interior. But one of the first things, of course, is we don't know how many children are going to come. So we're all doing our surveys in Surrey. We think we'll be about a third of our students. Well, you'll never know until day one because parents have the choice. And so we're treating it just like a September in June, where we come in, we're going to count kids, and we're going to start organizing our schools, and most importantly, welcome children back.
We have a question asking, if a teacher or student becomes COVID positive, what happens? Does the school close? Does everyone have to quarantine? What's the protocol here?
So right away, basically, you isolate them and you would call home if it's a student. You get the parents to come and pick them up, and then there are cleaning protocols. And if it is indeed confirmed, then we would work with our local health authority and we would do a deep cleaning of the area and the school. And, part of what we need to prepare for is it's going to happen sooner or later in schools. We've already had it 3 times in Surrey, but the protocols given by the BC Centre for Disease Control and the Public Health Officer are really clear, and we're ready to abide by them and make it work.
Bob has sent a question in asking, why are support staff not being supplied with PPE, and why are they exempt from the 6-meter rule when working with students?
So again, in the guidelines, it is a big issue around personal protective equipment, and right now personal protective equipment is not recommended, but there may be unique circumstances where it is provided. Support staff work in such an enormous range of positions that you'd have to take, each situation as unique, but in general, it is not supported to provide PPE. That's the guidance of the provincial health officer. And then again, we'll work with our unions and every situation.
And then I believe he also asked about the 6-meter rule and support staff being exempt.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that support staff are exempt from the 6-meter rule. What you see is that they know that social gathering and physical distancing is difficult in a school setting. So there are going to be times when staff are going to have to be in contact with children. And we know, particularly for very small children, that they will be in contact with each other. So it's about minimizing contact, minimizing the risk. Physical distancing is the first level of control, and if that can't be maintained, then you need to do your very best in the environment and practice good personal hygiene practices, and then PPE, as you asked, would be the very last piece.
What about school playgrounds? Are they going to be getting sanitized? And if so, how often, especially because the community can essentially come and use them after hours or any time?
Yeah, so we don't clean playgrounds, and we announced today, and I think across the metro region, they're talking about opening playgrounds probably around June 1st. But yeah, after hours, kids come and they play, and so what we want to make sure is when children are going out to the playground that they do practice social distancing, that they wash their hands when they go out, they wash their hands when they come in, they minimize physical contact, they try and stay apart. And it's part of, we need to get to a place where children learn to play in a new normal. This is going to be with us. This is about living with the virus in the year ahead. And so we can't just keep things locked up. The playgrounds themselves were actually never closed by the public health officer, and we've worked with our municipality to open them, and yeah, they're going to be used, and we expect parents to be part of that equation as well for helping their children to be safe and to play within the rules.
We have one final question here from a parent who says, not every kid is going back to school. We know that. Those who don't attend, are they going to be missing out? Will their peers get more than them if they are going to school?
No, I don't think so. We've trusted our teachers' professional judgment to make the virtual program work, and they've done an amazing job of that. And now they need to balance this combination of virtual and face-to-face, and I think they will do an exceptional job. It's going to look different, the virtual program, when we come back, and it will look different, the face-to-face program. But the virtual and remote program is the main program, and teachers are supplementing that by being face-to-face. But of course, they're still continuing to support all learners through the weeks.
Jordan Tinney, head of the Surrey School District, thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the chance.
And we're going to take you live right now to Columbus, Ohio. Angry and sometimes violent protests growing tonight there and elsewhere in the United States. The epicenter of it all, of course, Minneapolis, where today more buildings were burned to the ground. We will take you there next.
And you are looking at a live shot of the North Shore Port of Vancouver. Tomorrow, return to sunnier skies and above seasonal temperatures. But enjoy it while it lasts. Why? Well, Brett will tell us after the break.
The weather update is brought to you by WorkSafe BC. Visit WorksafeBC.com for workplace health and safety resources, including COVID-19 prevention.
Okay, imagine you're out for a jog when a very large animal decides it wants a bite.
A BC man says that's exactly what a black bear tried to do to him in the Slocan Valley on the long weekend. Francis Levasseur says the bear charged at him as he was running out on a secluded trail. Thinking he was going to get killed, Levasseur scrambled up this tree.
He says the bear then tried to climb the tree beside his. Levasseur says he screamed and shook the tree and the bear walked away, but it returned every 10 minutes for 2 hours. Eventually, someone living nearby heard Levasseur's cries and went to help him.
A bear biologist says there were no cubs or prey nearby, so this bear was likely after the jogger as a predator, not trying to protect young or other food. Scary stuff.
You see in the cartoons the guy climbing the tree to get away from the bear. I guess it kind of worked in this case.
Well, you got to scream and shake the
and
tree
do all
as
that
well.
too. Exactly. All right, let's bring in Brett. Beautiful night tonight, Brett. Is this going to continue?
Yeah, I'm actually very happy to be able to say that if you're enjoying these conditions that we experienced today and right now, we're going to be seeing something like that throughout this evening and then once again throughout tomorrow. We're really going to be dealing with a buildup of heat coming up from Washington State, and this is going to be raising temperatures all the way across the southern half BC to well above seasonal values. So I want to start our weather story right there just by looking at our forecast highs across BC for the next little while. So for Friday, what you'll notice, Vancouver there, 24 degrees. Seasonal would be closer to 18, and if you look into the Okanagan, places into the far south going to be likely exceeding 30 degrees, including Penticton. If you watch then what's going to be happening come Saturday, you'll notice a big change up here. The coast, including places on Vancouver Island, are going to be dropping down by a few degrees, but that heat is going to be remaining and is going to be well established into the interior and the Kootenays. It's possible that Kelowna could even exceed 32 degrees on Saturday. But you may be wondering where that's all coming from and why that is the case. Well, as the dominant story has been all week, high pressure is just really building quite nicely over BC, and that's allowing for our skies to be relatively clear, and as it spins clockwise rather, it's bringing up that warmth from the States. But we are going to be going through a significant weather change-up by the time we get into the weekend. There's a rather unusually strong low that's going to be making its way up from Washington State shortly after all of that heat, bringing with it widespread rain, I should be saying, and the risk for some embedded thunder showers as well. The amount of rain here is going to be more than just a little bit of showers. We are talking about anywhere between 15 to 30 millimeters accumulating sometime between Saturday and Sunday before eventually we dry out on Monday. But as I like to point out every time, this is probably going to be helping us get to our normal level of rainfall for the month of May, and it'll also be doing wonders for our fire danger rating, which is ever so slowly creeping up across the province. A 5-day forecast, though, as to kind of sum up everything, a really mild and sunny day expected on Friday. And Mike, don't laugh too hard when yet again another Saturday in Vancouver is going to be a bit showery. And then to start things off next week, it will be much warmer and then clearer as well.
I know you have disappointed Mike the most with that Saturday shower, but...
You and your Saturdays.
Thanks, Brett.
Well, another day of violence in Minneapolis, St. Paul after the death of George Floyd Monday night while in police custody. Buildings set on fire, protesters blocking highways. Fires shattered glass and more looting this afternoon. St. Paul police stood outside this Target store trying to put a halt to the violence. But the anger is spreading with widespread protests throughout the United States, many of them turning violent. CBC's Paul Hunter has more on the growing anger in the U.S.
Minneapolis today, with its charred remnants of last night's rioting, the fury evident at every corner. Overnight, demonstrators had rampaged. The violence, the anger, and the flames, at times well out of control, continued until dawn. And throughout, looting was equally rampant. It's all become soberingly familiar in this country, so too the action that sparked it.
320, we're code 4.
This body cam video and separately this security video show some of the last few minutes of George Floyd's life. Stopped on suspicion of passing counterfeit money, what seems a straightforward arrest somehow devolves into this.
I can breathe. Please, the name of it.
Excruciating to watch. It's Floyd, now on the ground, begging for his life. Handcuffed, gasping for air. Police officers knee on his neck while others do nothing.
I'm
never going to get my brother back.
Floyd's brother, Killeen, said today he's tired of seeing black men die.
They executed my brother in broad daylight.
The officers involved have all been fired. The city's mayor wants them charged as the frustration continues.
The reason why you see the anger in Minneapolis is because this is not the first time.
Civil rights leader Al Sharpton today emphasized the rioting in Minneapolis isn't the issue.
The violence I'm addressing is how a man could hold a man down with a knee on his neck for 9 minutes. That's when the violence started.
Seeking answers and justice in a country grappling yet again with its seemingly forever racial divide. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
The largest meatpacking union in the United States is sounding the alarm about COVID-19 and the growing toll it's taking on workers. The union says more than 3,000 employees at U.S. meat plants have tested positive for the disease. At least 44 of them have died. It's calling on the White House and companies to do more to protect workers. Meatpacking plants in Canada have also been shaken by COVID-19. A deadly outbreak at the Cargill facility in Alberta was linked to more than 1,500 cases.
Donald Trump is retaliating against Twitter days after it flagged one of his tweets with a fact check.
He's imposed an executive order that threatens the speech protection social media companies operate under. And as Katie Simpson tells us, that's not Trump's only tactic.
We're here today to defend free speech from one of the gravest dangers it has faced in American history.
The grave danger the U.S. president sees is an anti-conservative bias on social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. And it's why today's executive order is aimed at making them liable for how they regulate content and what users post.
What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group or political activism.
Trump is frustrated with Twitter in particular after the platform slapped a fact check this week on his misleading tweets about voter fraud. And that's why he wants these tech giants to face the same scrutiny as traditional publishers.
When Twitter and other companies act in a way where they're labeling tweets or labeling content, that they're acting in an editorial manner that makes them publishers, and so they lose that immunity.
The order will likely be challenged in court, and experts question whether the president has the authority to make this change, though early reaction is mixed.
I just believe strongly that that Facebook shouldn't be the arbiter of truth of everything that people say online.
Trump's opponents say this is a deflection tactic from the 100,000 Americans dead by COVID and 40 million more out of work.
But what the president is doing is silly. It's silly. But let's say this. It's a distraction.
This issue is expected to become even more fraught as the U.S. inches closer to Election Day. With coronavirus putting traditional campaigning on hold, the use of digital space has never been more important. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
You just won't be able to look away. Llamas, reindeer calves, and even a monkey. An adorable wave of newborns to show you. Yes, Mike, that's coming up. We're all adapting every day on this road back to normal, or whatever the new normal will be. And at CBC Vancouver, we're adapting too.
We enter phase 2.
So you won't hear the same story every day.
But we all have to move carefully.
As life changes from day to day and week to week, we'll keep you connected to your community with news and top stories.
Good evening. The images.
Stay safe at home and out there.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Indian Summer Festival marks its 10th anniversary by transforming itself into a season of online events. CBC Vancouver is a proud returning sponsor. On July 4th, join CBC Vancouver's Leanne Young for a special virtual cooking class with Vikram Vij. And don't miss special programming or contests. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/BC and keep connected with us.
Okay, time for our cute alert of the day. There's a lot going on at the zoo in Siberia. It's locked down and experiencing an adorable wave of new arrivals. Yeah, they include newborn llamas, reindeer calves, and even a monkey. Where's the monkey? Wow. There he is. Even the zoo's rare Egyptian geese have joined the baby boom. The facility's been closed for 2 months because of the pandemic. Staff say the lack of visitors has encouraged the animals to get busy.
They were shy before.
Exactly.
And farming and avian migration season can't be stopped by this pandemic either. This comes to us from farmer Cedric Zoel, out seeding his field about 180 kilometers northeast of Saskatoon. What a beautiful shot. And on the backdrop of that ominous sky, what looks like thousands of snow geese. Now, this is the time of year when they fill prairie skies, often covering the entire surface of area lakes and dugouts. Zoel says the scene unfolded at his farm for about 15 minutes.
That's a lot of snow geese, and you're a bird person, so you've got some extra info on these birds?
Well, you told me this. You were pointing it out, that all these snow geese, thousands of them flock to Delta every year between October and April. So you can see images just like that. People, I think, take quite a few photos of that.
They drop in for a visit there. All right, that's it for us. Dan's here at 11 o'clock tonight after the National.
Have a good night.
Thanks for watching.